Tonight on Four Corners, as 7-Eleven goes into damage control, we expose the wage scam at the heart of the multi-billion-dollar convenience store empire.
There's been a sense of panic in the office. We've suddenly have gone from turning a blind eye to digging up as much as we can on franchisees and then putting it on the record. And in the short time we've been doing that, the last 3 or 4 weeks, almost every franchisee has been caught not doing the right thing. That is to say, not paying correctly. The only reason that anything has changed is that I think the company now fears that they're going to be exposed.
By Four Corners?
It seems so.
There have been many inquiries instigated over the years as a result of Four Corners programs, but we've never actually had one announced before the story's gone to air. Until now. The story is our joint investigation with Fairfax Media, which reveals a pattern of widespread wage fraud inflicted on workers across many of the 620 convenience stores run by the 7-Eleven chain across Australia, an empire that generates more than $3 billion in sales a year. We will clearly show this practice cannot be explained away simply as the fault of a few rogue franchisees. It's done with the complicit knowledge of head office. At the top of the chain, a brother and sister who have amassed a fortune. In contrast, we have many examples of workers at 7-Eleven outlets being seriously underpaid or not paid at all, as well as falsified records and simple blackmail. Having declined to answer the many awkward questions we'd have liked to ask them for the program, the 7-Eleven head office this afternoon announced that they would establish an independent panel, chaired by, quote, an eminent and qualified Australian, unquote, to examine the allegations. Our reporter is Adele Ferguson.
In Australia, one family has built a fortune running a vast franchise chain. Some 600 stores spread across the country. Yet most Australians have never heard of the man behind it all. His name is Russ Withers. He's the founder and chairman of 7-Eleven Australia, an empire worth an estimated $1.5 billion. Overall, what was your impression of Russ Withers?
A forceful business person.
But has this massive fortune been built on the backs of 7-Eleven exploited workers and franchisees?
It scares me when I think about how I live my life with $10 and how all the international students at the moment, they are being underpaid and how they are living in this economy. It's very hard.
Prakash Kumar worked as a 7-Eleven store manager in Brisbane. He's one of thousands of workers who are overworked and underpaid. When they don't get paid, they don't eat.
One of the guys, he didn't get paid for almost 7 or 8 weeks again. And he doesn't live. And I go, what's wrong? Are you all right? And then he says, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten from like the last 3 days and nights. Can you give me the sandwiches that have expired, that you are going to put it in the bin? I ended up paying for his fresh sandwich. At that time, I was in the same scenario. I hadn't got paid for 8 weeks. And every morning I used to go to the store. First thing I would hear is, hey, Prakash, I haven't got paid for like this many weeks. Can you please talk to me? And I was in it. I'm in the same boat, mate.
Workers claim they're being paid half the award wage or less, if they get paid at all. Why didn't you quit?
There are a lot of students that didn't get the pay where I used to work because they left the job. So you leave the job because of the franchisee and you don't get the pay because of the franchisee. So you are in the lose-lose situation, you know. I mean, like, it has to be, you know, fixed.
Michael Fraser is a consumer advocate.
Somebody had to do something. I didn't see anybody else doing it. I was compelled to help.
He's been watching 7-Eleven since 2012, when he moved to the Gold Coast, right next to a store.
I'd go there frequently every day for milk and bread and things of the sort. And from time to time, I'd meet a guy there named Sam, and I'd make sort of jokes about, you must be getting paid a lot of money, you've got a never-ending shift. And he told me, he said, no, I don't get paid good money. I don't earn good money. I get $12 an hour. One day he leant over the counter to me and he said, Michael, this is not just this 7-Eleven, it's all 7-Elevens. They all do illegal wages.
So that's repeating findings, like every time they come to the store, they check for the roasters.
Yeah.
When Michael Fraser kept asking questions, Sam Pendham invited him to dinner and told him what was really going on.
So did you see the payslip?
I have seen payslip and
for Mohammed's wife?
Wife, yeah, and she's on payroll as well. I used to work 70 hours, sometimes 80 hours, low wages, no respect, no breaks at all, and underpaid, everything. So that is the reason only has to do more hours, so to compensate to get that money, so run for a week surviving here. They treat like dogs. He just like treats like in a slum dogs.
Sam's experience compelled Michael to visit dozens of 7-Eleven stores to investigate whether it was a few rogue franchisees or something far more widespread and sinister.
Just doing a survey, finding out how much people get paid in 7-Elevens. Are you below 20 or above 20? I've been to 60 stores, been to 3 states, spoken to hundreds of people. Every single person has been underpaid. Thank you so much. See you later.
Michael now liaises with many victims in their homes to avoid the extensive surveillance systems that operate in every store.
During the work time.
He's not yet met a single worker being paid the minimum award wage, today set at more than $24 an hour.
I was getting paid $10 flat, no weekend rates, no penalty rates, nothing. It was just $10 for day and night, whatever.
Pays $10 he offered me to an hour.
Same, no difference. $10 an hour minus tax.
$15 per hour. Sometimes he pay $15 or $18. My friend worked in the 7-Eleven and gets paid $12 per hour. There are about 70 stores. I can show you that like that.
Pranay Alawala, a student on a visa from India, quit his job after suffering a back injury, lifting boxes in a Brisbane 7-Eleven store where he worked.
I never got that much pain in my life. I thought I'll go back to my hometown, so at least my mom can look after me. So then my friends helped me. Now I can stand, I can work. I don't want to repeat this again. I want to stand behind this. I want to raise a voice. I want to say that everyone has to pay the pay rate as per the government.
When do you reckon you could get together? We could have a look.
Stories like Pranay's prompted Michael Fraser to call 7-Eleven head office to fill them in on wage abuse throughout their stores.
I phoned them and I wrote to them, and they were quite dismissive on the phone. I said, well, I've got evidence here of people being underpaid in a store. Might you want to know about that? I would like to give you the evidence. And they told me on the phone, we're not interested.
In the past few weeks, Four Corners has spoken to many disaffected 7-Eleven workers. Our investigation reveals the extent of wage abuse. It asks, how much does head office actually know about the exploitation? Indeed, is it complicit? 7-Eleven started humbly enough when Russ Withers and his sister Bev Barlow brought the franchise licence to Australia in 1977. Russ Withers, the son of a Melbourne grocer, opened the first 7-Eleven store near where they grew up in the working-class suburb of Oakleigh. The company took advantage of the controversial move to extend trading hours. Later, Withers took on the supermarket giants, expanding the business into the discount petrol market.
The margin that's being passed on through 4 cents a litre discount has got to come out of the grocery price. So it means either higher prices at the supermarket shelves or lower profits for shareholders, and I doubt whether the latter would be acceptable.
There are now 620 7-Eleven stores in Australia, earning a profit of more than $140 million a year for head office. The Withers and Barlow families own the business outright. Their lives have all the trappings, private jets and sprawling mansions. In May, Bev Barlow spent $20 million on a waterfront mansion in the Melbourne suburb of Brighton. Russ Withers owns a 60-acre country property in the Yarra Valley, worth an estimated $10 million. He's a keen equestrian, and his love of sport secured him a highly coveted position on the Australian Olympic Committee. Their $1.5 billion empire includes the Australian arm of the Starbucks coffee chain, 300 mobile petrol stations, and an extensive property portfolio. But much of the wealth of this intensely private family seems to be built on a business model that relies on exploiting some of the most vulnerable people in our society. Cash-strapped students, visa holders, aspiring Australian citizens.
When a franchisee breaks the law, there is a question of whether the head office itself is in some way abetting the behaviour. There is a provision in the Fair Work Act that if you abet unlawful behaviour by others, then you are liable for a penalty, admittedly a very small penalty. Franchising is a big part of the economy these days, $170 billion. So it's got to be run right and in accordance with Australian standards.
Hi, Stuart. Yeah, I've got this really interesting thing about 7-Eleven.
When 7-Eleven head office ignored Michael Fraser's calls, he contacted a lawyer he knew, Stuart Levitt, who specialises in class actions.
Did he make notes or anything, or keep proper records?
Yeah, it seems like...
He said he'd met a number of students who were being ripped off, and it seemed to me that this was an opportunity for mass rorting of not only the immigration laws, the superannuation laws, the taxation laws, the employment laws, and also abuse of people in Australia who deserve better.
Australia has well-publicised challenges with illegal immigrants, but the bigger issue may be the widespread exploitation of Australian visa holders. The 7-Eleven workforce is built on the backs of 4,000 workers, many of them overseas students on visas. Students are only permitted to work 20 hours a week without breaching their visa conditions, which makes them easy targets for exploitation.
They can't work more than 20 hours a week, and so many students go and work for people like 7-Eleven, who offer them 40 or 50 hours a week at a reduced rate of pay, which is in total contravention of all of our labour laws and other laws. And in doing so, they're breaching the conditions of their visa, which puts the franchisee in a position where he can blackmail these people into silence. And once they've exposed themselves to that vulnerability, they have to keep their mouth shut.
And they do.
And they do, or mostly they do. We've encountered some people that don't, but they're few and far between.
Mohammed Rashid Ulat Thodi is living in Australia on a student visa. When he arrived in 2008, he was dux of his university in India. He started working at a 7-Eleven store in Geelong, where his boss insisted he work up to 60 hours a week. Mohammed was warned not to complain, that if the authorities learned he was working more than 20 hours, he would be deported.
They wouldn't say that they will be in trouble. They will say, you're in trouble, you'll get deported. Because you're working more than 20 hours, you're breaching visa conditions.
Mohammed, tell me how the scam worked. Let's pick a date. According to his payslips, Mohammed was being paid award wages.
So it shows 24.5 hours into $20 an hour.
But he was only paid for half the hours he actually worked every week. Workers call this the half-pay scam. So to all intents and purposes, this looks right.
Yes, that's how it works. It's exactly the half number of hours, but the double the pay. So that'll be exactly the same.
That's how the scam works.
Yes, that's how it works. But
let's say you're working 20 hours. In your payslip, it'll only show 10 hours. I did inquire about it. They said so that you can work more hours. So basically, you can work up to 40 hours, and in your payslip, it'll be still showing 20 hours.
If I compare that date...
So that immigration wouldn't know about the hours that you work. So that's when I started thinking, okay, this is actually a scam.
For little pay, Mohammed was taking big risks. Working the late shift was dangerous.
Every weekend we get fights, arguments, people coming in and, maybe they would be angry outside of the store. They come in and pick on us because we are not Australians. Like once there was a guy coming into the store and paid inside the store. A couple of times we had bad fights and things.
7-Eleven's 24-hour trading makes it a target for crime. On average, every 3 days, a 7-Eleven store is robbed. Sam Pendham, a student from India, lived through 2 armed robberies during his time at 7-Eleven, which were captured on the store video.
They just start screaming and yelling at me, get into the counter, give me the money, and get a little panic because it's too close to me with the knife. So I took the money, and after that he asked for some smokes. Like a customer, can I have a couple smokes? Oh, okay, fine, take it. And he ran away. And then I called police and security people and called my boss as well. They came.
What did your boss say?
He said he's not happy. He should fight or throw the till on him, something, hurt him. Why did you give the money? Then he get aggressive, why did you do that? You should fight. So he get angry on me rather than sympathy. That felt very bad for me.
So he wanted you to fight the robber?
Yeah, fight the robber. Or throw the till on him, throw the money or something. Hurt him.
Risk your life for $180?
Something like that.
Mohammed's situation deteriorated when his franchisee insisted he work at their South Yarra store, 80 kilometres from where he lived in Geelong.
I was doing double degree in architecture and construction management at Deakin in Geelong. Then third semester onwards, I was in South Yarra. Working in South Yarra, I was basically doing 10-hour shift, and on top of up and down 4 hours on travel. So that's 14 hours gone. Then come back home, uni, and then so sleeping will be pretty less, probably 2 or 3 hours a day.
So how much were you getting paid at South Yarra?
Probably about $75 for 10-hour work plus 4 to 5 hours travel. So you're getting only $5 in your hand. So it's not worth it.
For Mohammed, the figures were no longer stacking up. He was working virtually around the clock at 7-Eleven to pay university fees of $10,000 a semester. Deprived of sleep and time to study, he was failing on all counts. Down and out, he took one last shot. He decided to risk being deported by reporting the wage scam to the regulator, the Fair Work Ombudsman. What was it about that case that made Fair Work want to get involved?
This was one of the early examples we saw of a matter involving deliberate manipulation of the records. This was a case where we had 6 employees who were underpaid around $85,000, which is a large amount for these workers.
The court found systematic exploitation of 6 highly vulnerable workers. The judgment said that 7-Eleven management admitted that non-compliance with workplace laws was relatively common among 7-Eleven franchises. Despite this ruling, Mohammed and his co-workers are still waiting to get the tens of thousands of dollars they're owed because the franchisee was put into liquidation.
Although you won the case, technically you lost it because you lost your money, you lost your job.
Mohammed's case triggered 2 separate raids by Fair Work, a total of 76 stores. What was the outcome of the first set of audits?
The underpayment of, or the recovery of some $172,000 that we were able to deliver back into the hands of around 80 workers. So that was across 20 stores in Sydney and Melbourne, and they were significant underpayments, and I have no doubt that it was as a result of that work that 7-Eleven formed the view that they needed to do something about compliance with workplace laws in their franchisees. The outcomes of that audit were better than the previous ones, which perhaps led us to think, wrongly as it turns out, that 7-Eleven was improving, that 7-Eleven operations were picking up their act, so to speak.
Do you believe you have a legal case against head office?
Oh, I think there's a legal case not only against head office, but also against the US parent company.
In the United States, 7-Eleven stores are also drawing attention for illegal work practices.
The 3 local men indicted on federal charges.
In 2013, the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security raided 14 7-Eleven stores.
The locations at West 26th Street in Norfolk, London Boulevard in Portsmouth, and 2 in Chesapeake, one on Taylor Road, the other on Portsmouth Boulevard.
In the US, Special Agent Gabriel Garcia from the Department of Homeland Security is determined to come down hard on this type of wage abuse.
Within this office, as well as HSI globally, it is a priority for us to pursue these types of investigations, showing the community and other companies that this is something that we will pursue. And I strongly believe that we are deterring other similar conduct from other companies.
Garcia believes this is not an isolated case at 7-Eleven stores.
It's very widespread. I think that it's a conduct that's widely used within those franchises.
At least one 7-Eleven operator is now behind bars.
He pled guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud and conspiracy to harbor undocumented aliens for financial gain, which he received a 7-year sentence. Additionally, he was ordered to pay $2.6 million in restitution to 30 employees.
If you compare that to the limp results which Fair Work Australia has achieved, there's no comparison. People go to jail in America for the sort of things that people don't even get prosecuted for in Australia.
I bought a 7-Eleven and what did I get? Stalked and bullied and deep in debt. They pool their money and American dreams, selling ice cold Slurpees and magazines.
In Pennsylvania, franchise industry veteran Sean Kelly has set up a website called Unhappy Franchisees. He claims it's not just the workers being exploited, but franchisees as well.
Many 7-Eleven franchisees have likened their relationship to slavery, that they feel like they're slaves to the corporation. However, slaves don't have to pay to be slaves.
Sean Kelly says head office controls virtually every aspect of how stores are run.
7-Eleven will claim that the franchisee is the employer and all of that, and that is a standard response to labor issues from all franchisors. However, 7-Eleven has a very central role in paying of these workers because they've got they do all the payroll and they do all the back end work. When a company has that much control over people who are supposed to be business owners, a lot of these abuses can occur. And right now, anybody who's thinking of buying a franchise, a 7-Eleven franchise, has to take a hard look at what they're really getting.
In Australia too, there is disquiet, even inside head office. A whistleblower has come forward on the condition of anonymity.
It's something which has bothered a lot of people, including myself, and it's something that you just can't... You get to a point where you just can't let it go for any longer. Too many people are being exploited for us to just keep carrying on, turning a blind eye. Enough is enough. A lot of us know the kids who work at these stores pretty well. You see them every week, and you know that they're working really hard for their future. They're usually students, and you know that they know that you're in on it. And you feel guilty, you feel sick. You feel like you're part of the exploitation, you're just letting it happen. But also you feel bad for the franchisees. A lot of those guys, they're not all bad people. They're just trying to make a future, but they're trapped. They've bought into a system which will have to exploit kids to get by, or they have to be exploited themselves. So you just feel like everyone's in it, caught in a trap, aside from perhaps the guys at head office.
Under the standard 7-Eleven franchise agreement, head office takes 57% of gross profit, and the franchisee gets the remaining 43%. Out of its share, head office covers costs such as rent and maintenance. Employee wages come out of the franchisee's cut.
There's a real inducement in the store management agreement for them to minimise their payroll in order to justify their own drawings, and that's actually a provision in the agreement itself.
The 7-Eleven franchise model is a highly controlled model, and so head office needs to take some responsibility for the system that they've put in place, given the prevailing pattern we're seeing of fabrication of records and underpayment of workers in its operation.
This is a recording that I made the other day.
Consumer advocate Michael Fraser recorded a call he made to an agent who sells 7-Eleven franchises. The conversation turns to award wages and head office.
Nobody pays their staff full wage, man. That's the thing. You wouldn't be able to afford to run profitably if you were paying those wages.
Wow.
There's no way. You're paying $12 an hour. Like they all pay $12 an hour soon, but
would 7-Eleven know this?
It's not of their concern. They just look the other way. All they're concerned with is getting their 57%. So don't buy a 7-Eleven because they're shit. Right?
I appreciate your honesty.
Literally, they're shit. You don't need a 7-Eleven. There's a reason why you don't see any people like you owning them. That's because you know that you can figure out that they're shit. Save your money.
Michael Fraser then decides to meet agents and a franchisee selling a franchise in Brisbane. He secretly films the encounter. Michael first meets the agents, a husband and wife team.
Christina?
Yeah, Michael.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Your business partners?
He then meets the franchisee.
Nice to meet you. Good to see you, mate. Nice to meet you.
The franchisee shows Michael the financial statements for the store, prepared by head office.
110,000, right?
Yes.
Profit.
They then discuss pay rates.
So what does nighttime pay for here then?
Nighttime normally is what, $11, $12?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
The conversation then turns to the hiring of staff illegally, such as people without visas.
Okay, and they have to have a visa, do they?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Well, you can hire someone without visa, but you can.
But we...
Oh yeah, you just, you can. It's totally up to you, so,
We can, we can get around that.
If you hire someone without visa, like $5 an hour,
Ah.
But if you get caught, you need pay shop.
If you have a look here, you'll see in the year 2013.
Right. Later, Michael and I try to make sense of the financial statement.
This business, in 12 months, is spending $64,000 on payroll.
And how many staff does this shop have?
Apparently 6.
So 6 staff, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, and
Seems crazily low.
It doesn't add up.
Four Corners asked Alan Fells, the former chairman of the ACCC, to look over the 7-Eleven business model and the 57-43% profit split.
My impression, my strong impression, is that the only way a franchisee can make a go of it in most cases is by underpaying workers, by illegal behaviour. I don't like that kind of model.
Would you sign a 7-Eleven franchisee agreement?
I would never sign an agreement with 7-Eleven because the only way of making profit in many cases is to underpay workers and to break the law.
In every 7-Eleven store, sophisticated surveillance systems monitor and track each and every item and worker. Each Slurpee cup, each chocolate bar is tracked by a high-tech inventory system managed from head office. Even the store temperature is monitored.
They have surveillance, universal 24/7 surveillance on each of their franchisees, which is not only intended to maintain compliance with systems, but also to maintain a watch over the staff. And this is not only visual surveillance, it's also auditory surveillance.
7-Eleven head office invests in extraordinary store surveillance and it manages the payroll of staff, and yet it claims ignorance when it comes to widespread wage abuse.
It's just impossible to believe that they're unaware of it. I mean, a franchise store with 600 outlets or more would know what's going on.
On September 13 last year, Fair Work raided another 20 7-Eleven stores across the country. It was the third raid in 6 years.
Okay, and who are you?
Again, the investigators took photos and interviewed staff, finding further evidence of widespread wage fraud by franchisees. The regulator is now turning its attention to head office.
The question that I would put to 7-Eleven is, what's your contribution to this problem, to this conduct? We hear stories of some of these franchisees being put under quite a degree of financial pressure. What is 7-Eleven head office doing to ensure that the response to that pressure is not ripping off their workers?
7-Eleven head office is ultimately answerable to the board, which is led by major shareholder and chairman Russ Withers. A key role of any board is to ensure a company properly manages its risk and compliance and protects its reputation. It begs the question, what is this board and this chairman doing to address issues of wage abuse? Alan Fells has met Russ Withers several times in his role at the ACCC. The chairman, Russ Withers, is also the major shareholder. What sort of obligation does he have to clean this up?
He obviously has a deep obligation. And there are also not only moral and legal obligations, there are reputation issues for 7-Eleven. Who will want to shop at 7-Eleven if when you're going in there, you know that the law is being broken.
During this investigation, Four Corners has endeavoured to speak to Russ Withers. We tried to catch him at his country estate. Hello, it's Adele Ferguson from Four Corners. Could I speak to Russ Withers, please?
They're not home, sorry. They're not home at the moment.
Do you know when they'll be home?
I'm not really sure.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Withers and 7-Eleven head office would not be interviewed. Nor would they put a figure on the number of franchisees exploiting workers. Four Corners has obtained internal head office documents that reveal in July and August, 69% of franchisees surveyed had payroll compliance issues, including fraud and falsifying timesheets. The document shows that the store surveillance is picking up fraudulent behaviour. In fact, the misconduct by franchisees is even worse than 69%, according to The Insider.
It's almost 100% of franchisees who engage in wage fraud. So, head office are not just turning a blind eye, it's a fundamental part of their business. They can't run 7-Eleven as profitably as they have without letting this happen. The reality is, it's built on something that's not much different from slavery.
In February 2014, Russ Withers jetted off to Sochi in Russia as an official of the Australian Olympic Committee to enjoy the Winter Games. Back in Australia, some 7-Eleven workers finally took their complaints to the regulator. Prakash Kumar's boss was ultimately fined $7,000 for underpaying him.
The Fair Work gave me a letter saying that he has underpaid me $21,000, approximately somewhere around, for 1 year, last 1 year of my employment with him.
But Prakash Kumar will never see the money he's owed because the company went into liquidation. His former boss left the court in a black Porsche.
After all that, after all the frustration, after all the pain, trouble, after all those interviews, recorded interviews, it's been a year, and the franchisee, 7-Eleven franchisee, had sold the business. He deregistered the company, and as far as I know, I heard it from an outer source, all the money is in his family trust. There is a very less chance that I can claim it later on.
Prakash says there are thousands of students just like him, many pushed to breaking point.
One of the guys, he was so desperate in need of money. He used to work 3 or 4 or 5 nights in a week in a row, and then he didn't get paid for 7-8 weeks, and then he just finally gave up and stood outside the store with a banner saying that this 7-Eleven hasn't paid me for 3 months, can you please help?
7-Eleven head office was notified. It sent the closest representative to the store to fix the problem. Prakash says head office told the employee to go to Fair Work. Head office then tipped off the boss, who called the employee.
And then he says, all right, get the facts straight. First thing, if you make a complaint, I'm going to get it deported, because in my store, I have a proof with your signature that you have worked more than 20 hours. That's going to put you in trouble, first thing, and you're going to get deported. For me, it's all right. I'll get a couple of $1,000 fine, maybe, and I'll pay it off your salary, which is pending still. So you decide who loses.
The threat worked.
And then the guy with the play card outside the store, he comes back from the Fair Work and talks to me and explains me what happened, and sits down on the floor in the broad daylight in front of the customers and starts crying. He says, what can I do? Where can I get a help? Because I try to go to Fair Work, they threatened me, I tried to ask the help from head office. They sent me to Fair Walk. So where do I go now? What do I do? He started crying, literally like a child sitting down on the floor. I couldn't do much. I said, all I said, you need to go home now. We'll talk later on. That's what I sent him, and just, went on.
Workers like Pranay Alawala, Prakash Kumar, Sam Pendam and Mohammed Rashad Ulad Thodi are pushing back. They're ready to risk all to expose the muck that seems to lie behind the shiny 7-Eleven logo.
Just wondering, how much do you pay for a staff here?
That's head office pay for it.
Head office pay for it? If you don't mind asking, how much do you get paid?
I get paid
15.
For Pranay, it may result in deportation. But for him, that's no longer the issue.
I want to raise my voice. I don't care about me. If the government says to me, if you made a mistake, you did the wrong thing, you have to go back to India, then I'll go back to my hometown, happily. But I need change.
For his efforts, Pranay is now being threatened with legal action by his former boss, who's accusing him of breaching his visa.
Are you angry?
No, I'm not angry. I'm disappointed.
They say, why doesn't someone do something? The government knows, the tax office knows, the Fair Work know, head office knows, everybody knows. Nobody seems to care, and they can't understand why. Why does no one care?
Michael Fraser and Stuart Levitt are working on a class action. A few workers have already signed up, but they hope more will come forward.
This is a very strong case, and all we need to do is put fire in the bellies of the victims to the point where they have the intestinal fortitude and courage to come forward regardless of the immigration consequences.
Our whistleblower says the entire 7-Eleven business model needs to be overhauled.
Do you think it's greed?
It's greed. Nobody needs $143 million profit in the year.
Do you think the jig's up?
Absolutely.
One of 7-Eleven's latest promotions to lure customers is coffee for $1. But what's the real cost for this convenience?
When you walk past a 7-Eleven shop and see the $1 coffee sign, what do you think?
7-Eleven, a barista-style coffee for $1. The people who are paying the real price are those international students. They're working like slaves in your stores. For $10, they have a tagline, and it's called "Good Call." That's what they call it. And I thought, no, not at all. It's not a good call at all,
There are more than 1 million people on working visas in Australia. This is the second story we've presented this year on their mass exploitation. Apart from what these stories say about the exploiters, the questions that won't go away are: why has it been allowed to get to this stage? Where else is it going on? And will it be allowed to continue? Next week, religion and food. Do we care that much of the food we eat in Australia is certified halal? We take a look behind that noisy debate. Until then, good night.